All right, so
You sent over all these articles on the EU's new AI regulations, and it seems like you're really interested to see how this is going to play out,
yeah.
especially with Apple and Meta saying something about it.
Well, what's really fascinating here is the EU is kind of taking a leading role, potentially setting a precedent for the entire world on how we manage AI going forward. And we're not just talking about fine-tuning algorithms or anything like that. This gets into the really big questions of fundamental rights, the influence of big tech, the whole picture.
So this isn't just some far-off what-if thing. This EU AI Act is like happening now.
Yeah.
And it's already making waves.
Absolutely. The EU is really trying to walk this tightrope between encouraging AI innovation because it has so much potential for good, but also putting in safeguards to protect people. I mean, imagine if an AI was using your data. Your health records your online activity, all of it, to make decisions that affect your life. Wouldn't you want some rules in place?
I would want some rules in place, for sure. It is my data, after all. From what I've been reading, it seems like this AI Act kind of revolves around a risk-based system. So an AI that's, say, helping doctors diagnose cancer is going to be underway stricter scrutiny than an AI that's just, I don't know, recommending what you should listen to next on Spotify.
Exactly. High-risk AI systems, especially those used in things like healthcare or law enforcement, they got to meet a much higher bar. Transparency is key. We need to be able to understand how these AI systems work, what data they're using, and obviously human oversight is paramount. We can't just let algorithms make life-altering decisions without any checks and balances.
Yeah, that makes sense. But here's where it really gets interesting. Because we have these tech giants, Apple, Meta, even OpenAI, the ChatGPT people, they're really pushing back hard on this. They're saying that this act, that the AI Act will stifle innovation and put European companies at a disadvantage. And there's even that really bold statement from OpenAI CEO who kind of hinted that they might have to stop operating in Europe entirely if the regulations aren't changed.
Well, yeah, and that raises the question. I mean, would you, as a user, rather have access to the absolute cutting-edge AI, even if it potentially means sacrificing some of your privacy? Or would you prefer to prioritize ethical development, data protection, even if it means technology might advance a little bit slower?
That's a tough one. It's almost like they're saying, we want innovation, but only on our terms, without really addressing any of the concerns people have about how their data is being used.
Yeah, and that's where critical thinking is so important. We really have to stop and ask ourselves, are these companies genuinely concerned about some kind of widespread chilling effect on innovation? Or are they mostly just worried about their bottom line if they're forced to be more transparent about their practices, especially when it comes to our data?
Right. It makes you wonder. And it also makes you think about how other parts of the world are approaching this whole AI regulation thing. We came across an article comparing the EU's approach to that California bill, SB 1047, the one that targeted those really powerful frontier AI models.
Yeah.
But ended up getting vetoed.
And that veto was pretty telling, because that California bill was way more industry-friendly, really narrowly focused on preventing those catastrophic, almost sci-fi-like AI disasters. But the EU's AI Act, it's much more about establishing a framework for responsible AI development from the ground up, no matter how powerful the AI system is.
So it's almost like the EU is playing the long game here, thinking about the bigger picture of AI's impact on society, while others are more focused on the immediate and maybe more self-serving concerns.
Yeah.
But how does this all actually play out in the real world?
Well, one really interesting example is how companies are using their platforms to try and sway public opinion.
Oh, you mean like all those memes about the EU banning memes?
Exactly. It's become a battle for hearts and minds, playing out one meme at a time. Meta, especially, has been criticized for using really vague language and a lot of emotional appeals to try and stir up fear and uncertainty about the AI Act without ever really addressing the core concerns head on.
It's like, don't worry, trust us. But they don't explain how any of this will actually affect people like us.
Yeah.
And they're not addressing people's real concerns about data privacy either.
Yeah, and it just shows you how important it is to think critically about everything you see online. You can't just scroll through your feed passively anymore. Take a second, think about who's posting what you're seeing, why are they posting it, what do they get out of shaping your opinion?
Right. There's always more to the story, especially with something as complicated as AI. And speaking of complicated, we read about Apple delaying some of their AI features in Europe. They said it was because of the EU's DMA regulations.
Yeah, that's another piece of the puzzle. Apple is officially blaming the DMA, which, is broader than just AI, covers a lot of digital markets. But some people see this as a strategic move by Apple, like they're trying to push back against more regulation.
It's like a game of chess, isn't it? These tech companies are always trying to anticipate the next move.
It is a high-stakes game for sure, and how it ends could have a big impact. Apple is good at controlling their narrative, but what they do matters more than what they say.
For sure. And it's not just about one company or one regulation either. It feels like the whole world is watching this EU thing play out.
Absolutely. A lot of people see the EU as a leader in global tech regulation.
Right.
So if they actually implement this AI Act, it could start similar regulations all over the world. And that would set a new standard for how AI is developed and governed everywhere.
Almost like the world's holding its breath to see who's going to back down first. The EU or these tech giants.
It really feels like a turning point. We're not just talking about who controls the newest tech or who has the biggest market share anymore. This is deeper than that. It's about the very nature of artificial intelligence. What is AI's role in society? And who gets to make the rules about it?
It's pretty mind-blowing to think about what AI could do if it was developed responsibly. Imagine AI helping us fight climate change or come up with life-saving cures. AI could help us solve some of the world's biggest problems.
Exactly. The potential benefits are huge. But we also need to be really careful and think about what could go wrong. What if AI just makes existing biases even worse? What if AI is used to manipulate people on a massive scale?
It's a double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah.
We need to make sure AI is used for good, but also reduce the risks. That's why this whole debate about regulation is so important. We need to face these ethical issues head on now before it's too late.
Right. And it's not just the EU taking action. Other countries and regions are dealing with the same things.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We read that the CEOs of Meta and Spotify are concerned, too. But their argument's a little different.
Yeah, Zuckerberg and Ike are worried about open source AI development. They say that's really important for innovation. And they think that the EU's strict data privacy rules could put European companies at a disadvantage globally.
So they're worried Europe will fall behind in the global AI race because of these regulations.
That's the argument they're making. They're saying that if Europe is too strict, AI development will just move to other parts of the world where there are fewer rules.
So does that mean it's a bad thing? Maybe taking things slower, even if it means a slower pace of development? Maybe that's better for everyone in the long run.
That's a really good question. It's tough to say, honestly. I think this really shows why we need a global conversation about AI ethics and regulation. If we don't want to race to the bottom, with every country trying to have the fewest rules possible, then we need to find some common ground.
Yeah, it's like we're all figuring out this whole AI thing together.
Exactly. And like any new frontier, there are going to be challenges, maybe even some risks. But I think we can use AI for good if we're thoughtful about it, if we work together globally, and if we put ethics first.
It seems like this conversation is far from over, like we're just getting started.
Oh, absolutely. This is going to get even more complicated and more important as AI technology gets better and as it becomes a bigger part of our everyday lives.
Which brings us back to you listening. We've talked about a lot. The EU AI Act, the global implications, all the different opinions out there.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for you?
It means you have a voice in this. Don't just accept what you hear from tech companies or governments. Learn about the good and the bad of AI. Think about how AI is being used in your life. The apps you use every day. The stuff you see online.
So be informed and be involved.
Yes, exactly. And don't be afraid to ask tough questions. Challenge what you hear. Demand transparency and accountability from the people who are building and using these AI systems.
Because the future of AI isn't set in stone yet, is it?
Not at all. The choices we make today, together and on our own, those choices are shaping the future of AI.
Well, that's a great point to end on. This really was a deep dive. We'll definitely keep an eye on this, and we'll keep exploring these big questions in future episodes. Until then, keep those questions coming. And thanks for listening.